Errol Spence Jr. versus Yordenis Ugas at the AT&T Stadium for the WBA, WBC, and IBF welterweight titles. A fight that I've been looking forward to for quite a while. It feels like forever since we've seen Errol Spence in the ring, and you can say what you want about Errol Spence, but this guy never takes tune-ups, never takes easy fights. He's always involved in the big fights and don't get much bigger, to be honest. Ugas, obviously the WBA super champion now, obviously was a bit up in the air because of the whole situation with Pacquiao being stripped, but obviously beat Manny Pacquiao in his last fight, so now he's the world champion. Everybody recognises him as a world champion. And this is honestly, I think, a lot closer than I think it would have been maybe a year ago. Initially, if you had told me that Spence and Ugas were fighting, I would have said that Spence wins pretty clearly. But now, there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know if Spence is the same after his injury with his eye. A lot of people still feel there's remnants of the car crash. Maybe that will still have an effect. And, Ugas is somebody who is a very, very... one thing I'd say, physically, in the welterweight division, these two are probably the biggest welterweights there are. I think if you stuck them in the ring with a Crawford, I think Crawford may beat both of them, but physically not the same. Spence is big and so is Ugas, and it'll be interesting to see, especially if they come up close, who has the physical advantages. But a brilliant fight though, and we need these. It's been a while since we had a unification fight on this level, and if whoever wins this fight does fight Crawford, I'm happy that this fight came first. Like, people will want the Spence and Crawford fight, but I think it's better if Spence can capture the WBA bout. It would be a whole lot better for the division, because then I think, maybe financially for Crawford might not be great, but having Spence and Crawford with all the belts on the line, I think will make it even better. I think if there's a big fight and all the belts are on the line, I think it adds to it. Same with the Joshua Fury fight. It was a big fight, but when you had all the belts on the line, that's what made it that. And this is what makes this fight unique. It's a unification bout. Like we said, we haven't had one in a while, but yeah, should be interesting. So starting off with Yordenis Ugas. Obviously, his last fight beat Manny Pacquiao. A fight which a lot of people... Manny Pacquiao is one fighter where I feel like when it comes to him, their heart rules their heads half of the time. Everybody thought Pacquiao would be too much for Ugas. They said the same about Spence, but honestly, Pacquiao, old man. And it showed in that fight. Ugas isn't like younger or anything, he's 35, but he still showed that he has that almost that more of a spring in his step in comparison to Pacquiao. And Pacquiao didn't do terrible in the fight, but he just got outclassed. And Ugas did a really good job of sort of just out-jabbing Pacquiao and keeping him at range. There was a few times in the fight where he would catch him with the looping hook, and Pacquiao just wasn't able to really, sort of deal with it. Younger Manny Pacquiao would have dealt with it. I don't think that's a real debate. At his age, 42 years old, he needed to back in. And I think, honestly, that fight probably might be the best thing, because when it comes to him possibly fighting Errol Spence, I always thought that fight was terrible for Pacquiao. Trust me, the Spence fight would have been bad. People say Spence is slow, but honestly, he would have really beat up Pacquiao. Pacquiao, again, Spence, yeah, he's not maybe the most athletic, but his whole style is to run through you, and I think he really would have hurt Pacquiao. And look at what Ugas did to him. I know styles make fights, and it's different. Ugas is obviously got that tricky Cuban style. He's orthodox, so it's different, but Spence, I think, really would have beat Pacquiao up. So, not the worst thing for him. For Ugas, though, it was a brilliant performance, and I think he showed again. People don't talk about Ugas' experience, but he's been fighting for a long time, and I think the one thing in that fight with Pacquiao that really stood out was just how long Ugas is. Every time they kind of came with these exchanges, Ugas was kind of just beating to the punch every single time. So a brilliant victory for Ugas. And if you look at his record, before that he beat Abel Ramos, beat Mike Dallas, Omar Figueroa, lost to Sean Porter, which a lot of people feel like he won. It was a very close fight, split decision, so not shocking that some people also thought he would. But yeah, Ugas, somebody though, if you look at his record, there's nobody that really sticks out that much. Again, the big name on his record is Manny Pacquiao, and again, I always say he kind of strikes as somebody who's been doing it for a long time, but it feels like now he's getting the recognition, and a fighter who really, I think, like I said, I think he's extremely slept on in this division. He's a hard fight for anybody, and physically, the guy is huge. And I think, like I said, him and Spence are the two biggest welterweights. So up close, it'd be interesting to see how Ugas deals with it. You know, who's the stronger out of the two? Because we all know that Spence sort of. I think he said this is the first fight. I think where he said he was hiring a nutritionist because he was killing himself to make 147, but now I'd imagine the weight is a bit easier to make for him. But yeah, Ugas a worthy world champion, a rightful world champion in my opinion. And at his age 35, he hasn't got much longer left. I think this probably is his last big fight, big payday. And I think that's why he was really pushing for the fight, because I think he knows, you've got to be smart in this game, get in and get out. And that's what he did. So a really great fighter though, and I think a real tough fight for Spence. And when you look at Errol Spence Jr., as of today, probably my favourite fighter in boxing. Somebody who almost is a little bit of a welterweight Marvin Hagler. Not as athletic and doesn't switch stance like Marvin Hagler did, but his whole style is just to walk through opponents, and he has done this to damn near everybody. And if you look at his record from the Kell Brook fight, so the Kell Brook fight, we all know in that fight, one thing about Spence mentally, and this is why I kind of always liked him, mentally, he does not look fazed by anything. He went into Bramwell Lane in Sheffield, Kell Brook's hometown, and just wasn't sort of distracted by the booze or anything, just went in there and how made Kell Brook quit in his hometown. I think that should show you. Did the same, when he went to Floyd Mayweather's gym and sparred Floyd and wasn't, deterred by all the heckling and stuff that they were doing to him. So mentally, Spence is as tough as they come. And then after that, did the same thing to Lamont Peterson, beat him up badly, and in the end, I think they stopped the fight, and then after that, fought Carlos Ocampo Marinquez, knocked him out in the first. I think it was with a body shot. Probably is up there, the top 3 body punches in boxing. Maybe the best, to be honest with you. I think Canelo's definitely in that discussion, but I think Spence digs to the body like nobody else does. Then fought Mikey Garcia, outpointed him. A really good fight, a really good performance from Spence. Garcia was just too small and he got beat up in that fight. But he took a lot of good shots from that to fight Garcia. And then the Sean Porter fight, which I feel Spence does not give enough credit for. He literally went in there and beat Sean Porter at his own game. Decided to essentially have a war with him and won. Got the knockdown in the 11th, which I think is what sealed it for him. But a brilliant fight though. That was one of the fights of the year. And then after that, he had his car crash, but then came back AT&T Stadium again and fought Danny Garcia. Again, a year, if more, had a horrific accident. Fought a very, very dangerous guy in Danny Garcia, and again beat him up, and again showed his level. Spence is one of the best, and I think people need to really give him that respect. People love running with narratives in boxing. They love the narrative of Joshua running from Wilder. They loved it when Floyd running from Manny. They had the narrative of Canelo running from Triple G, and it almost, because they think this almost takes what they think of the fighter in a way. Spence is world class, and if he wins this, I think he already has the best resume at 147. But I think if he wins this, it's even more established, and getting another belt, I think, definitely gives him more bargaining power with that fight with Crawford, which I do think, if Spence wins, I don't know where he goes from here. He has to fight Crawford. There's nobody else left for him to beat in the division. Only guy you got is Keith Thurman, and I don't know, is there much demand for that fight? I don't know. And they need to make the Spence Crawford fight soon before Joe Ennis comes in the picture, because I think he beats both of them, to be honest. But that is another thing for another day. But when I go into the fight, first start off with Ugas and what I think he needs to do to win. First of all, if we go through here, if you look at, like I said before, Spence and Ugas are very, very big welterweights. And I think for Ugas, despite him being huge for the weight, I actually think one of the things he needs to do here is to actually keep the fight at a distance and not try and almost fight up close with Spence. You know, with Errol Spence, if you look at his reach, it is 5. No, that's the height. It's 7.72 inch reach advantage, and then if you look at Ugas, it is a 69 reach advantage. So really, wouldn't make much sense for Spence for Ugas to fight on the outside, but I genuinely don't think he can beat up Spence on the inside. I think he needs to keep the fight at range. I think he needs to keep that jab in Spence's face and don't get drawn into a firefight, because Spence, he isn't like a one punch, one hit tap guy will knock you out cold. He's capable of it, but it's not really his thing. It's more of a volume puncher, but he's a hard hitter, Spence, and I think that's what people don't get. He's not an explosive puncher, but he's a hard puncher, and I think that's the one thing. And you see guys when they fight him, do they get knocked out? Maybe not, but they get beat up at the end of it. Look at Danny Garcia, look at Kell Brook, look at Lamont Peterson. All were just looked like they just been through hell in the fight, and I think that's something that Ugas needs to, if he doesn't want that to happen, needs to avoid that. And one thing about Ugas, he has a very straight stance, and I think keeping it at range would be more beneficial for him. Again, it isn't that much of a reach advantage for Spence, but there's enough, and I think that is what he needs to do. One thing he also needs to do, I think, is keep that jab in Spence's face as well. And I said it before, but the jab is so important for Ugas. He uses it to set everything up, and I think Spence has a very, very good long jab, and it could be a battle of the jabs. You've got the orthodox southpaw clash here, but I do think with Ugas, with Pacquiao, he was able to get there first. Now Spence he's fast, but he's not a particularly athletic or explosive. So you can, I think, beat him to the jab if you're just smart with it. One thing about Ugas as well, he's very accurate with a lot of his punches. He doesn't really waste many punches, Ugas, which is one thing why I think he was able to beat up Pacquiao the way he did. He, rarely, you don't really see him swinging in wildly and missing these big shots. He's very, very accurate with a lot of stuff that he does, and I think one thing about Ugas as well is he uses almost this method, which a lot of fighters do. Tyson Fury does it a bit, but he can get away with it a lot because of how big he is. He does his sort of style of defensive shot just to lean back and just get out of the way rather than actually slip, and I think it works, but against Spence I don't think you can take that risk because of how long Spence is, and again he has got the reach advantage, Spence, so I think you need to be smart with what you do here. But one thing that I think, and this to me is how he wins this fight, Ugas, if you can force Spence into a chest battle, I think he beats him at that. Spence is a very underrated boxer. Very, very underrated. And I think people talk about how he never stopped Mikey Garcia, but I think that fight did show how much he almost... Again, he's underrated at that. He can outpoint a guy. He can out-jab him for 12 rounds. He doesn't choose to, but I think it's 100% within him. And one thing about Ugas is that he rarely, you look at him, he doesn't really go for the knockout. His whole way of fighting is almost to out-jab guys, outwork them a little bit, and again, not go for that one blow. And I think he needs to keep to that approach and just keep Spence at a distance. And if you can force Spence to a spotlight, I honestly think Ugas beats him by that. I don't know if Spence can really outbox Ugas. He maybe at points can, but I don't know if he can do it wholly for the 12 rounds and get the victory that way. I think you can do that with guys like Mikey Garcia, who you're much bigger than. You could have even done it against Sean Porter, to be honest, but obviously you chose to have war with him. Actually, I say chose to have war. Porter brings the war to everybody, to be fair, so I don't think it's really that thing. But yeah, I just think that with Ugas, just keep it at your range, fight your fight, and don't try and, I think, have a war with Spence. If you go in the inside, I think the problem with if you try to go to the inside with Spence is that that's his fight, and Spence is one of the best, I think, inside fighters in the whole of boxing. In the pocket, the way he rips these body shots, it's not good. And interesting from how Ugas approaches this one, because some fighters are kind of at this age, they throw in the towel, not literally, but in the sense of they kind of look at it one last payday, let's just sort of go out there, do a thing and retire. And some fighters bite down and really go for it. So I'd be interested to see what his mindset is like coming into this fight. But then looking at Errol Spence and how he wins this fight. So the first thing I said with Ugas, he can't allow Spence to get an inside. For Spence, that's what he needs to do. Ugas has a very... There isn't anything really flashy with what Ugas does. He has a very straightforward stance. And with Ugas, one thing you notice is that he's almost somebody who... He commits... When it comes to his defense and blocking shots, he kind of goes both ways. If you go to the head, he will fully pull his guard all the way up and leave his body exposed, and it's vice versa. So Ugas is tricky. He's a Cuban fighter, but he's very easily hit, and this is what makes it interesting for Spence, because Spence is somebody who his whole style is to walk through you, is to dig deep, to rip the body, and I just think getting inside, I think, would be key for Spence. Physically, like I said, it'd be interesting to see who is the bigger out of the two. I think for Spence, I don't know if you can really gamble much on your strength. Neither of these two can in this type of fight. They're both skilled, so I don't think it'll become a real dirty fight. But I do think for Spence, getting inside is key, and Spence's right hook to the body is absolutely brutal. So I think working that. He also, people kind of look at Spence as quite simplistic, but the problem with Spence is that maybe you can outwork and you can do different things, but you are going to get beat up in the process, and that's just something that I think is going to be an issue. And I think Spence's toughness as well. He's very, very... Spence's chin also gets quite underlooked. Actually, to be fair, there's nobody in his welterweight division who I think really has a bad chin per se, but Spence will walk through shots, eat them just to get to you, and I think that's why sometimes he can look a bit simplistic. But some guys, they do that. They gamble on their chin. They kind of look at themselves and they take that risk, and I think Spence is brilliant at that. So yeah, so getting inside is important for Spence, and I think when I look at Ugas, again, very straightforward. So I think one thing Spence needs to do a lot, and I could see this happening a lot in the fight, is just shooting that straight left to the body, because Ugas very much stands straight forward against you, doesn't really move or show you different angles. He'll occasionally, from now and again, he will pivot and go to the side, but really he's so, I don't know, very much look at his stance. He's just so big, Ugas. He's almost like a welterweight version of what Valuev was like. Not, don't get me wrong, Ugas is much more skilled and better than Valuev, but it's like there isn't much there where you look at and you think he's hard to hit or hard to get out the way of. So I think for Spence, the body shots are going to be there all day, and there's an advantage to being big. You're longer, you are able to bully your opponents, but one disadvantage of being big is that you're almost an easier target. And I think for for Spence even, them body shots I think are going to be there all day, and I just wonder how Ugas takes them. So I think getting inside, working the body like he always does, and I think for Spence, I think making this an ugly fight, not ugly as in getting inside, clinching all the time, but getting in Ugas's face and really making it a horrible fight for him, I think will really, really, I think, tire Ugas out. And for Spence, I think that's what he needs to do. I think he needs to make this a dirty fight, make it a horrible fight for Ugas, get in his face, do a little bit like what Sean Porter did to him in a way, and just get in his face, pump that jab out, and just do that. Because I honestly think with the way Spence fights, I could see him tiring Ugas out if he can do this. If he can just get in his face, step on him, don't give him any time to work, don't let him try and pick you off, just get on his face, rip the body, and just smother him a little bit. And I think that really, and I could see that happening, because honestly, as good as Ugas is, and I do really rate Ugas, I think he's good. Again, his resume, you don't look at the many elite guys in there. He beat Pacquiao, which is a great victory, but I just think with Spence, this is if Spence is at his best, which you don't know what these fights, but I gambled that he is. Spence is an elite guy, and I think he would be right. And I think for Spence, the body shots are going to be there all day, and getting inside, working the body like he always does, and I think Again, with Ugas, great fighter, but quite simplistic at times with his stance and a lot of the stuff that he does. So yeah, I think for Spence, if you can just get in his face and almost just make him work, I think it really would be a problem for Ugas in the fight. And so yeah, I think that's how both of these guys can get a victory. I think for Ugas, like I said, keep it at a distance, use your jab, force Spence into a chest battle. And I think for Spence, the opposite. Make an ugly fight, get inside, shoot the body shots and smother Ugas and make him work, because I think for both of these guys, there's some similarities, but they are very different. One's more of a slick boxer, one's a how would I describe Spence? One's a bit more of a bull in Spence. He kind of goes in there and tries to run through you, and one's orthodox, one's southpaw. It's a great fight, but when it comes to my prediction for the fight, like I said, I could see possibly Ugas winning, but I don't know. I just think Spence stops him in this fight. I don't know why. I just got a feeling. I think he'll come in here, and I think he hasn't fought for a while, so I think he'll want to really make a statement in here. And I think, again, Ugas is very good, but I think with the body shots of Spence, the way Spence fights, the way he kind of comes forward, yeah, I just think that Spence will stop him. I want to say between 7 and 12. I say in the later half of the fight, I can see Spence stopping him. But a great fight though. But yeah, I think Errol Spence wins this, and I think he has another bout to his collection. Hopefully, I hope we get this Terence Crawford fight, because it's been brewing for a long time and we need to see it. It's two elite welterweights, two of the best in the world, and it would be a great fight. But yeah, that's my thought. Spence stops Ugas in my opinion. And yeah, that's my prediction for this fight. A great fight. I'll do a review after the fight, talking about it. And yes, until next time.